Now starting AI and UGC, empowering XR and mobile creators. A speaker presentation by Deepak Nair, developer advocate at Meta for Horizon Worlds.
Nice to meet everyone. My name is Deepak. I'm a developer advocate here at Meta. I'm mostly focused on Horizon Worlds, which many of you might not know what Horizon Worlds is, but we'll get into that. But what I like to joke about is like, I naturally get to sort of promote the cool things that people at Meta are working on. So it's a really fun job. But today we're going to talk a little bit about like Meta's sort of push into UGC and how sort of like we're using AI to help speed up creation and help creators and developers sort of ideate on the experiences they're making. People ask like, what is UGC, right? So it's this idea that these social experiences, and there's some of the biggest on the planet. And I think one of the reasons people don't realize why UGC, which is user-generated content, is so big is because it enables this sort of like creative journey that I think a lot of humans want to experience. They want to experience both being a player, right? So that's just like playing a game. Then they want to sort of be a collaborator, right? Whether that's interacting with the creator, creating something in the experience, or like interacting with the creator themselves that they can, or inject sort of their piece or flavor into the experience. And then it's also allows them to become a creator themselves where they can sort of make their own content and monetize it. I think that's what makes these platforms so powerful, is it's this combination of sort of like social sharing, creation tools, and ways you can monetize your experiences. And so Meta is entering into this space, but I think it has like a unique advantage, right? So we're not just trying to be like another UGC platform. We're trying to bridge what I call sort of this idea of socials and immersive creation. So whether you realize it or not, Meta is like founded on this idea of connection, of social presence, right? They're in the Instagram business, WhatsApp business, Facebook business. It's all about connecting people. And what you find, which we've said, I think earlier in these talks, right? People love this idea of like a third place, right? And having your digital twin represented in there, right? And that's what these UGC platforms do so well, is you can represent in this sort of like third space and make connections with other players, but also having people make connections to your content. So again, why is Meta entering this space? So like, again, I say there's some of the big experiences. So I'm pointing to this game right here, which is like Grow Your Garden, which is on Roblox. Whether you realize it or not, it set the concurrence record, right? For like 21, 22 million at one time playing. That's more than like almost all the top games on Steam, right? And so like, why is this so powerful? Is because it's connecting humans in a way that you haven't been able to do before. And it's allowing people to express their identity, but also the creator, and make a connection with their audience. And I think that's what makes it so magical. And so like, what I think is unique about for Horizon Worlds, which is trying to enter into this UGC space, is that it's bridging this gap between different audiences, right? So like other ones have like PC or mobile, but we're really committed to like our whole spectrum, right? Which is PC, VR, and mobile, right? So we're bringing all these different audiences in of different form factors. And I also think another thing that they do so well is social. So, and social can be sort of defined in two areas, right? One area is connecting people on the platform, right? So whether that's different experiences in games, different mediums and form factors, mobile, again, VR, but also connecting them outside the platform itself. Because remember, the main problem I kept running into for creators is like, how do I reach audiences? And so we'll talk about it a little bit later, but like people can actually sort of like just sort of go on the Instagram feed, click a game, and then instantly join that game. And that's the type of things we need in this space in order to get people's content shown, in order for them to make money, which is what I'm really excited about. But this other aspect that I think makes Horizon Worlds sort of special is also addressing that other problem. How do we make it cheaper? And with the Gen AI tools, it speeds up development, right? And we'll go into some of those tools right now. So you guys probably don't know, but Habitur like took it upon himself to sort of like, oh, how fast can I make a game if I was really trying? And he made like this amazing sort of like suitcase scramble type game, which is like you're picking up your luggage from the airport in like 5.5 hours. He used nothing but Gen AI tools and created a game. And so that just shows you the power of like how AI is sort of coming into this space. And so there's many aspects I could talk about Gen AI, but I'll focus on two right now, which is sort of like game development can be sort of broken up into like different aspects of like the world you're trying to create. So one is like you want to obviously create objects into your world, right? That's why they call it like object-based programming. So like with the asset gen, you can basically get it to like with prompts, get it to create like a coin, a couch, like an airplane, right? And it'll create those assets and even give you a texture to put on top of the assets. The other thing is sort of like you can also create environments, like create a like beachy like landscape, and it'll sort of like create that landscapes. But things that I'm not showing right now, it'll also create scripts, audio, and my favorite, which is the skybox. So right now you can sort of like already do 5 of the components of game development without having to know too much of game development. And I think that's pretty amazing in trying to like build out these worlds in order to connect with people. So like, as you can see, like you have these different aspects of sort of like game development that's broken up. But so to me, like something that's always left an impression on me is sort of like Minority Report, because the whole idea of it is like, you know, how easy is it to like sort of like in the XR space, right? Like just to move images, move objects around and just sort of like function, right? But the whole idea I took away from that is like the ease, right? That to me is the future. Is like how easy do we make it to interact with technology in our world? And so like the coolest, I think, AI feature we have is sort of this creator assistant, which is like, it's not quite the Minority Report, but it's sort of what I actually think is more functional, which is like, hey, let me type into this box, sort of like a chat GPT, and like, here's what I want to do. And it'll build out that context for that world. So it's like, say, hey, I want to create a platform where you can pick up a coin and it adds it to my total. It'll create the scripts, create the objects, create those sort of environment. And I think that's sort of the future, right? Is what you sort of already see in TikTok and YouTube. And I think that's why it's so powerful, those platforms, is because they make creation so easy. So I think game development is catching up. It still has to take a little bit longer, but like that's what AI helps, right? I don't think it's trying to replace anything. It's trying to help people like bring the learning up and intelligence up. But the coolest feature I sort of want to talk about is sort of like these NPCs that are connected to LLMs. So like I'm very much like a historian of game development, and something that's interesting is like, you know, I grew up on platformers, right? And then it went into sort of this open world type of like landscape. And the problem with open worlds is like they kept getting bigger, but you weren't necessarily having more interactions, right? So I actually think one of the next revolutions in the game industry is like, how do we make things more dense? And I think like things like these embodied NPCs that are sort of like, you can create characters without having to write all the lines of dialogue because they're connected to an internal LLM, is like that next step of evolution, right? Where you can feel like you're actually having a lively conversation with like the bait fisherman in the shop, right? And like talking to them about any question, whether it's about McDonald's or about like what bait you should use in the world. Like it can respond to that just like you would do it with any other LLM. Like you've seen those little aspects in modded like Skyrim games, but what's cool is like we're giving that feature out to creators. So I think that's sort of where you're going to start to see more magic happen, is AI sort of enables that at scale and gives creators that type of feature. So when you're sort of designing, right, in this new future, I think it's important to start incorporating a little bit of these AI workflows, because I think it helps speeds up. Like one joke I make with creators as I talk to them, or developers, is like, don't build your dream game. Because ideally you're trying to prototype to sort of test the waters of what's resonating with audiences. That's where I think like AI can sort of like come help prototype and quickly gray box an area. So say if you're still committed to, which is totally fine, I actually love it, like you're bringing in your own models, bringing in your own FBX files, like you can do that in Horizon Worlds, right? But the idea is like, don't spend all that time making that stuff, see what's actually clicking in terms of your gameplay. And so I'm showing a couple of games here, but they all use some aspect of AI in order to build out their world. And again, we just sort of do these 6 to 8 week competitions because we really believe in our tooling that you can sort of start creating these base experiences and then build upon them, of course. And I think the more you sort of adopt these things, the more you can sort of test like what's resonating. And that sort of leads me to my like last part of the sort of like social connection, right? Is like, okay, AI can speed up this workflow. Meta has these like sort of social ecosystem that's bringing other audiences, but that means nothing if it's not reaching the right people, right? Because that was, again, the problem I kept running into for developers. And that's where sort of like deep link technology comes into play. So like, I made my wife, she's not a gamer. So I made her sort of like download, I sent her a link to a game, template game I made, and I sent it to her over like Facebook Messenger. So I gave her no context, just told her to click on the link. And of course, my wife doesn't have an account. She does it, it automatically makes an account in one click. She accepts it, and you're about to see, like once it loads, it throws her into the world. So notice the key thing I said here is like it never downloaded like Horizon Worlds app. It just did it right in the same browser. So I think that's the future, right? Is like AI speeding it up, but also creating these UGC platform that can reach both internally, but externally, the communities you're trying to reach. To say if you're making this cool cooking game, right? And you have like a Instagram that's based on cooking, you can sort of merge those two worlds and like say, check out this experience. And I think that's sort of the future of UGC, and the future of like how AI can sort of like speed up that process to get and start testing what works with your audiences. So that's what I am really excited about, is like for people to check out the tools and really start to see like what design resonates with their audience. So I'll leave you with this sort of like last anecdote. I was at VidCon, which you don't know is like a huge like streaming and video conference, and like huge YouTubers were there. And what made it interesting was like the biggest person was J-Man, who's an awesome like VR influencer. He does a lot of Gorilla Tag content and makes his own game called Schmackle. But he had the hugest following by far. And you saw nothing but like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids with like Quest headsets. And that to me shows you where like this sort of next generation is already native to all of this. They're native to AI, they're native to like community building, and they're native to like XR, VR, and like mobile. And that's sort of, it's more, and so that's the future you're tapping into. So it's more about like, how do you use these tools to make those connections for that next generation? Because they're seeking it, right? They're seeking that connection with the creator, they're seeking that connection with the content, and they're seeking that sort of like identity inside the ecosystem. So that's what sort of excites me about all this space, is like AI is just enabling it to get to a little bit faster. It's not taking away anything, but allows people to sort of like start to experience what it is to be sort of like a game developer. So that was my little spiel about like the AI tools that are available and sort of how it's interacting with the UGC space. But if you have any questions or anything interested you at all, please reach out, use that QR code. Someone on the team will happily guide you through the process or how to become a creator on the platform. We're heavily invested in multiple spaces, so it's not just like mobile, but it's also VR. So happy to like explain any of that. Please LinkedIn me, do whatever you need to, and I'm happy to come around.
Want to check out more from the AWE Nite Orlando Immersive Intelligence Lab? Watch more talks and presentations from our incredible XR plus AI innovators. Thanks for watching, and please leave a like.
Nite Orlando.